Hello everyone, this is Sohail. Today I will be talking about speeding up Rails application using Memoization. Before moving forward, I would like to thank the RubyConf Pakistan team for such a great initiative. Starting with the introduction, I did my bachelor's in computer science from FAST in 2013, and last year I completed master's from FAST in software project management. I have been in software industry for last 7 years. During that time, I did work on different technologies like Ruby on Rails, Vue.js, Angular, and React.js. My strongest area is developing web applications using Ruby on Rails. Currently, I'm working at Virtual Force as a principal software engineer. So let's move to today's agenda. I will be discussing these points. The whole session will move around a few questions, and I will try to be elaborative as much as possible. I will start from the problem statement, and then we will discuss what is memoization and how it works, followed by some examples. Then I will discuss its benefits and where we should use and where we should not. So moving to problem statement. So every developer can write bug-free code, and I think we all are writing daily. There are only a few who write efficient code. In the start, the database has few entries, but with the passage of time, when the database grows, the performance issues come. The reason behind that was the code written is not good enough to support a large database. I would say first impressions are very important on the web. So website visitors make an instant judgment about you and your business. If the website loads fast, it makes a strong first impression. Very interesting stats were shared by kissmetrics.com. According to that, 79% of online shoppers say they would not go back to website if they had issues with loading. 77% of people expect a site to load in less than 2 seconds. 40% will leave the site if it takes longer than 3 seconds. If slow load speeds are taking people away, then I think it is a big problem. Some of the biggest companies like Amazon did some tests and found that if they slow down by just 1 second, they would lose $1.6 billion a year. This is a huge number. So let's have a look at the code that has performance issues. Imagine we have a billing system and one user has many accounts. Each account has its own budget. There is a method, total budget, for the user object, which calculates the sum of all the available account budgets. This is the model definition. You can see in the code. So total budget will be used multiple times in models, views, and controllers. So every time we use the total budget, there is a DB query sent to retrieve all available accounts for the user and then calculate the sum of all the available account budgets. How can we avoid the duplicate DB query and duplicated calculations? So this is the major question. I will get back to I will get back to this later in the presentation. So there are many ways to improve the speed of website. Memoization is one of them. So if we define memoization, memoization is the process of storing a computed value to avoid duplicated work by future calls. Seems to be complex, right? Yeah. To make it easy, if I split it down in 3 steps, I will get perform some work, store the work result, use stored results in future calls. This is the whole concept of memoization. Let me repeat. Perform some work, store the work result, use that result in the future calls. So the basic idea of memoization is that it remembers the result against the given inputs. In other words, we can say that it stores the results of an expensive calculations called by saving the results such that when you call the same function again with the same parameters, you do not need to rerun the function. Let me repeat, you do not need to rerun the function. This is a kind of optimization technique that is used to make the programs more efficient and much faster. So the next question is how it works. Ruby provides a very clean idiom for memoizing values with the or and equal operator. So this uses a logical or between left and right values, then assigns the result to the variable on the left. So you can also see in the code that is written on the slides. To understand how it works, we need to understand two concepts: truthy, falsy values, and lazy evaluation. We will start with truthy and falsy first. Ruby has built-in keywords for boolean, true, and false values. They work exactly as you would expect. So, like if the condition is true, like if true, then it will always run, and if it is false, it will never run. However, Ruby also has the concept of truthy and falsy values. In Ruby, only nil and false are falsy. All other values, including zero, are treated as true. So in the code we have a value as a string ABC123. So if there is value, then this code will run. If we assign nil to value, this will never run. This is the concept of truthy and falsy. So what is lazy evaluation? So lazy evaluation allows the program to skip operations that are not necessary. Like the logical or operator returns true if either left or right hand sides are true. This means that if the left hand argument is true, then there is no need to evaluate the right hand side, since we already know the result will be true. So I have a function which is logical or. It has two parameters, left hand side and right hand side. So if you see in the code, there are two parameters. Right hand side will only execute if left hand side is false. So combining these two concepts of truthy, falsy values and lazy evaluations shows that the or equal operator is doing. So if we combine these two, we will get or equal. So if in the code there is a variable value and it defaults to nil, then value or equal to test, value or equal something, puts value. So its output is the test. We start with the value being nil because it was not initialized. Next we encounter our first or equal operator, value is falsy. At this stage, so we evaluate the right hand side, which is test, and assign the result to value. Now we have hit the second or equal operator, but this time value is truthy as it has a value test. We skip the evaluation for the right hand side and continue to the value untest, and we will get the output test. So there is a very common misconception, which is that A or equal B is equal to A or A equal A or B, but it behaves like A or A equals to B. So in A equal A or B, A is set to something by the statement on every run, whereas with A or A equal to B, is only set if A is logically false, because OR is short circuiting. That is, if the left hand side of the OR comparison is true, there is no need to check the right hand side. So let's came back to billing system example. So I left in between, if you remember. So this is the old code which I showed you earlier on the top, and the code below is the code after the improvement. And instead of equal, I added a variable total budget with or equal sign. So what it is doing? So that means the first time we call total budget, following actions will be performed. DB will be sent, calculate the sum of budgets, assign the sum to the instance variable total budget. The second time you call total budget, no DB will be sent and no calculation performed. It will just return the total budget directly. So let's imagine if a method takes almost 10 seconds, then the second time it will return the result immediately. So there are effectively two types of memoization when it comes to Rails application, single line, and then the more complex form, multiple line memoization. They both have the same concept, and we can implement them using the same conditional operator. The only difference between the two types is that multi-line logic wraps up in begin and end block. So this is the only difference between these two. So before moving to benefits, if I show you how it runs. So basically I have a user class, and in it I have two methods, name and some method. So both methods are memoized. Like name, I have first name and last name. And then in the sum method, I have begun and end block, in which I added sleep for 10 seconds and then returns the true. So if I run this code, so I select first user and call the sum method. This is the first time, and you will see it will wait for 10 seconds. So now it returns the true after 10 seconds. If I call the same method again, it immediately returns the result. So this is the concept of memoization. So coming back to benefits, memoization basically is very useful because it allows us to do some work only once, and then we use the same through an instance variable. Memoization speeds up the application by running, you can say, less code. Cache is expensive work like calls to external APIs. So when should we use we use memoization? So when it comes to when should we use, we need to ask three questions. So when using memorizations, there are some questions that I think everyone should ask. How often is the value accessed? What causes it to change? How often does it change? If the value is only accessed once, then caching the value is not going to be very useful. Uh, the more often the value is accessed, the more benefit we will get from it. And then when it comes to what causes it to change, we need to look at what values are used in the method. So lastly, we need to consider how often the value changes. Are there instance variables that cause it to change? Do we need to clear the cached value when they change? So if we look at this code and analyze either which methods are eligible for the memoization and which are not. So first look at the title. The title method is probably only called once. It also uses time.current. So memoizing it could not give any benefit. So the next thing that we can see is revenue and cost methods. So these methods are hit several times when even within this class. Also, they both require hitting the database. They should be, I think, a prime candidates for memoizing. Assuming we memoize these, then profit shouldn't need to be memoized. Otherwise, we are just adding caching on top of caching for some minimal gains. So what are the ideal scenarios in which we should use memoization? When there is a duplicated database calls, like in Rails, we have current user method. I think that is the best method to memoize. Secondly, when we have got expensive calculations, like in the previous example, we have revenue and cost. The third situation is when we have got repeated calculations that do not change, like calling, we can say calling a third party API whose response will not change. So when we should not use memoization. Memoization should be avoided if result of memoized function is going to change over time. So business logic relies on latest value. If method is doing DB call to fetch data from database and your business logic needs latest data, then using memoization may give you cached data, which is not desired. So with methods that use instance variables. So these are the main situations in which I think we do not need memoization. To make it short, when you use the latest data from the database, then I think using memoization is not good. So this is the small concept of memoization. I hope you all will understand it. Let me see if there is any questions so I can answer. So I think there isn't any questions. So you can, if there is any question later, you can ask me through my email, which I mentioned in the previous slides. Let me go back to there. So yeah, you can send me an email. So there is a question from Suleiman. So he's asking the question related to the example that I shared. So he's asking, what if we change the account data? So we want new total budget, no, not memoized one. So yeah, so basically in the last I mentioned, if you need the latest data, means memoization basically cache your results. If you are always want to get the latest data, then that method is not good candidate to basically use for memoization. So next question that I have is from Rashid. So he's saying how it is different from caching in general. So basically, there are different type of cachings. If I compare it to that one, so basically it cache your results, like for example, if you have a method that fetches data from the database, so uh, if you are basically getting the data from the database, and it basically cache that result. So the other form of caching is different, and you can say that Memoize, when you are memoizing, it is also caching the results. Then another is saying we just use or equal for memoization. Yeah. So to memoize, we only need to or equal. So there are some advanced concepts in the memoization, like, so if there are a method that you memoize, in the method you use memoization, and it has some parameters. So the parameters are changing over time. So in that case, basically, you can say that we can use the hash to return the cached results. Let me see if we have any other question. So, okay, that's all from my end. Thanks everyone for joining. You can stay tuned and watch the next session at 8 p.m. Thanks everyone.